Alright, my friends, today is April the 7th. It is Monday, a couple hours into the New York session. Let's do the market outlook and plans for the week ahead. Okay, so we've got some craziness that's been going on. I'm going to be dubbing this suit season because this is the most we've been concerned with what the suits are doing in a really long time. So that is going to be a bit of the theme of this video today. We really care about what goes on with the SPX today and what the boomers end up cooking up. Yo guys, hit that like and subscribe button for me. Appreciate it. A few different things before I get into the macro outlook. Hearing speculation around a Fed meeting today. So that's definitely important per my update that I shared with you guys last night. It's definitely where I'm at from a, expectation standpoint. Next thing is CPI on Thursday, but definitely don't care about CPI right now. What's going to happen with the tariffs and, potential, Fed involvement and whatnot. That's obviously what's going to matter the most here. So closing thoughts on all that are the same that I've basically had for a while now. I'm not overly interested in trying to game out how any of these things are going to play. I approach these things from a very simplistic, low IQ point of view. Sure, maybe I could game out like the, consequences of all these different moving pieces and whatnot, but the likelihood of coming to a correct conclusion is pretty low. So it's better to just keep things simple, and I'm just operating off my trading system. And per what I had said on some of the more recent streams, it's pretty crazy how the SPX ended up lining up exactly with what I wanted Bitcoin to do anyways, right? So the stars are aligning, and that's where we're at. So without further ado, let's get into it. We'll start off with the Bitcoin macro. Bitcoin macro, pretty straightforward. First thing that I wanted to say in these notes is that when I'm sharing my Bitcoin thoughts right now, this is under the idea of Bitcoin trading within a vacuum. As you guys, are seeing, what happens with the major benchmarks in the world is going to directly impact Bitcoin, right? On Friday, everybody talked about how, Bitcoin trading, sideways while the SPX and NAS and everything are nuking. That's bullish for Bitcoin, right? And we've clearly seen, that's just not how things play out, right? These markets are inefficient, and pretty much anytime the whole relative strength meme starts to get yapped about, it always gets invalidated a couple days later, right? That's just the classic way that these things tend to play out in crypto. So my core thoughts on Bitcoin are still the same, that I think that, we're officially into Q2. You're trying to survive the rest of chop, the chop stage throughout the rest of Q2. As we get into Q3, I think that, as long as, something doesn't go totally wrong with equities, I think that we're just going to chop it up for the rest of the quarter and then trade higher later in the year. I haven't made any dramatic changes to my plans. As you guys have probably observed over the years listening to me share my plans, they don't change that much. It's because I'm not the type of person that takes in all these little details, about, tariffs and this and that. My experience has taught me that that's not going to make me make informed decisions. I'm actually going to make, terrible decisions when I try to, play five-dimensional chess against myself. So keeping everything really simple, same macro plan, no dramatic changes. I think we're going to trade up. I think we're in the middle of, doing the stupid summertime, triangle meme bullshit. It very much seems like we're on this leg, which is exactly what I have been saying. This is the reject 30-day rolling argument into, the final leg down before, we kind of just build out this range basically between these two previous ranges, right? We had this, 8-9 month range. We had like a 3-4 month range, and we're building value between the two. I'll discuss that right now as we get into medium time frame. First thing is obviously my core plan has now officially played out. And, I don't think that Bitcoin in a vacuum, I don't think that there's too much more downside to be had. Bitcoin absolutely is going to trade down if the SPX legs. So it's obviously, all hands on deck paying attention to what the SPX does right now. But that's the simple argument, right? Just looking at the Bitcoin chart, I think it's bottomed out where it's at. And that's been my plan for a while now. We finally traded into the 75K level that we've talked about, the 365-day or the yearly rolling. This has been an important area that I've been targeting for the downside. 75K had a lot of overlaps. Basically 75 to 70K plus or minus. That was our macro support zone. So we finally traded into there, and now you basically are waiting to see how we're going to resolve from this. My core thought right now, is that we are currently building value between the two previous ones. How I should, just for purposes of making this video, let me redraw this really quickly. Realistically, this value ends like right here, right? So this is our 8-9 month value, and then this is like a 3-month value, and now we're building a range between the two. This is what I actually called on Twitter right when we did this leg down. I said that this is what it would look like. We'll build out a range distribution between these two, and from here, we'll decide, right? Either we're gonna do a dead cat and start an actual downtrend from here, or we're going to trend resume and trade back up, which obviously, as you guys are familiar with by now, I am betting on the trend resuming, until I have been met with a true invalidation for that thesis. I'm going to keep running with the same thing. And the classic lesson I've taught over and over and over again, thesis invalidation and positional invalidation are not the same thing. Thesis has been intact, no problem. I don't care about 25% drawdown on a thesis because it's not, affecting me financially. But positional risk got invalidated ages ago. It seems like positional risk might be right around the corner, in a justifiable sense for us. That's pretty much it, right? Medium time frame is pretty straightforward. I've been patiently waiting for us to trade down into this area. And let's move into a little bit of altcoin talk. So altcoin talk, first thing I'm going to say is fuck them all, honestly, right? I've been saying this for like weeks now. Don't have any significant interest in any altcoins. The only one that really has any interest for me is OM, right? OM is one that, when the market started to get really bearish, somehow OM has been incredibly strong. Very fortunate to have traded this move in the group when the market was really weak. So I'm really happy with this coin. Structurally, it looks incredible in my opinion. So if I was to actively trade on a altcoin, this is probably the only one I would pick. Outside of this, maybe I would trade some, high tick kind of scam of the day coin. But from an actual trend standpoint, OM is the only one that has any valid argument for trend continuation. Aside of that, every other chart is pretty much cooked for the most part, right? You might see big green days here and there, but like for example, you look at Cato, right? It's green, but I mean, the thing's giga cooked, right? And it's going to be the same across the board, right? There's no real argument for holding anything outside of Bitcoin. It's pretty straightforward. So that's it for altcoins. Again, for active trading, right, I would just rather actively trade Bitcoin than trade any of these alts right now. That's it for me this week. Good luck out there. Potentially going to be, we say big week this, big week that, but this is no joke. This is a fucking big week for us. So lock in and best of luck. Cheers, everybody.